put in many hours putting all this information together and making sure that we were on track for what we needed to do for our students to get back in school, whether virtually or face-to-face. At this time, I would like to tell you that looking back at the beginning of the presentation with those metrics that I gave you as of August 3rd and what the recommendation has been for the Virginia Department of Health, we do recommend, and of course it's your decision, but we recommend that you open schools virtually for online learning for all students with the exception of the group that we explained on the Monday through Thursday, those intensive special needs students. As promised, we will be following and tracking the metrics that I shared with you earlier to ensure when it is safe to bring students back in for face-to-face learning, hopefully second 9 weeks, but it's still to be determined. And of course, the metrics are going to determine that because health and safety are the priority for us. And so with that, we can ask if you have any questions for me or the group.
I'd first like to thank all of you for the extraordinary job you're doing. I know you've spent hundreds of hours researching, trying to figure out all of the details. And this is a massive endeavor, I know that. And I appreciate everyone who has worked on this, especially all of these presenters tonight. All of you are very dedicated educators, and I know that. And we're lucky to have you in Suffolk Public Schools to do this work for us. And I'm sure there are many questions that some of us may have. I'll start with Mr. Riddick.
My first question goes to a group that I didn't hear mentioned at all in the presentation, and that's pre-K. And on slide 47, when you were addressing the learning modules, it was only covered from grades K through 12, and I didn't hear anything regarding pre-K. I have other questions, but that's my first question. The
pre-K is unique in that they utilize a specialized curriculum. However, we are going to allow them to use Canvas as well. That landing page that you saw for Ms. Kinchelough's class, that was the kindergarten teacher. We actually have an early intervention specialist who's in the Canvas course currently, and she's working on ways that they can try to incorporate that curriculum. There may also be some take-home packets for that group to provide some hands-on type activities, but they will also be able to utilize some of the online materials as well. And so they're working through that, but they will also be provided with the Chromebook, so they will be able to utilize the Canvas system also. So they are included in that. You just didn't see a schedule because theirs is going to look a little different. They will not have a set schedule per se like that one, but they will still have a schedule that will be established that's age appropriate for that group.
Anything else, Mr.?
I have a lot more. I just don't want to monopolize the time.
Okay. Ms. Dora?
Did someone say the SOLs were canceled?
SOLs have not been canceled. What has been waived has been accreditation.
Right.
So while SOL tests may still be given, they will not be tied to school accreditation.
Right, I just thought I heard someone say the SOLs were canceled. I don't think so, not yet anyway. Okay. Meal delivery is for all students? Like all of them?
That is correct.
Okay. And that starts September
8th. Yes, ma'am.
I noticed that you like our frog, by the way. I know, he's a cute little thing back here somewhere. There is a sandbox but I think that's per class, correct?
Sandbox is actually, each teacher has a sandbox generated automatically when they get a Canvas account. And the sandbox is like a play course.
Right.
So they can create whatever they want and put it into that course. The modules that they create in that course can be pulled into their actual course.
But if they have more than one course, so a high school teacher teaches 4 different courses, that's 4 sandboxes?
No, they could put all of that in one sandbox. One of the things, I'm sorry, I forgot to mention was that we are actually receiving the content from Virtual Virginia that is aligned to the Virginia SOLs. That content will be provided to all teachers in their original course. So we are synchronizing And I don't know how many of you are familiar with Canvas. In Canvas, there are multiple options to create a course. You can create one from scratch, or you can use a template, or you can have one imported from some other location. So what we are going to do is our curriculum writers in the next few weeks are going to take the content that is provided, which are full courses from Virtual Virginia for the majority of the courses that we offer. There are some they are not providing information on. But our teachers will actually begin to create courses for our teachers that have content in them. They will have test quizzes, they will have instructional videos, they will have all kinds of material that is very similar to what a student would get if they enrolled in the Virtual Virginia program full-time. And we will take that material, and our content writers will align it to our pacing so it matches with our pacing and move the modules around. And so what teachers will get when they come back to school, they will get a ready-made course that they can also manipulate. So they will have freedom to use certain modules. Some we will keep in there because we want to make sure that we have continuity in what we're providing to all students, but there will also have flexibility to bring in their own modules, their own assignments. If they see, for example, an essay, they would rather use something that may tie into something else that they want to work on, they can switch that one out with one that they created. So they'll have flexibility in that. But we wanted to make sure with this tight turnaround that teachers did not come back to school and feel like they had to create a brand new class as soon as they showed up on the first day of pre-service for 4 or 5 classes, or 6, depending upon what they teach. So we are going to be providing them with some content to start, and that's going to be K-12. So all students will have content when they come in. Pre-K as well will be included in that. So they will have content to start with. Our goal is to focus on at least the first 4.5 weeks, and then to continue to build from there.
Okay, so because I had gotten information that you needed one sandbox for a different course. If you taught AP Bio, and then you taught biology, and you taught ecology, you would need a sandbox created.
You can put as many modules into that sandbox as you want. The key is going to be, the sandbox is just a holding place for your modules. So
Gotcha.
you can develop modules for
Okay.
all 4 of those courses and drag them all into whichever course you want to at the end.
I'll put that out there. You said for the kids that would be in Alpha Best. The second one is our disenfranchised students. Can you expound on that, please?
Yeah, I will, as Ms. Forsman is coming to the podium. So disenfranchised students are several groups. Main group would be our McKinney-Vento students, our homeless students. We want to make sure that we still be able to provide them that opportunity because we never know how transient that population is going to be. It also could be any of our students that may have moved in from military or other areas that are still getting kind of used to the school community. And if Wendy, there's anything else you want to add to that. But we want to make sure that any students that may not have the traditional setting are also going to be taken care of with our child care provider.
Include low-income families as well as we move forward.
So do we know how many students K through 5 that our in-house, that it's in that first group? How many children are there of our own staff?
We don't at this moment, which is why we're putting the application out tomorrow so that our own staff can begin signing up.
So of the 726 slots, how will you, if you include low-income students, that could easily fill that up, and then there's no slots left for the third group. I mean, that could easily take that many kids. We have,
And these are initial slots of 726. As locations fill their 66 slots, a wait list will be created. And then at that point, Alpha Best will work with the administration to see if there's extra space in the building they can have to open up another room. So Alpha Best is going to work very closely with our school administration to make sure that we try to accommodate every student that we can get applications for that need this service. Now, they can't guarantee it because we don't know how many are going to sign up, but like we could have 8 at one school and 40 at another school, so we may have to do some moving around. But they are looking at it initially 726 slots.
and how many, if you say 66 per elementary school, how many rooms is that? How many students in a room?
They're going to do the same thing.
It's the same guidelines, Ms. Story. We're looking at 10 students per room, so 66 might be 6 to 7 classrooms, which kind of goes back to Ms. Forsman's point. If we need more, once we get to that 726 threshold, then we will try to see if there are additional classrooms available in that wing of that school or potentially another school that may have less.
Yeah. I think that's all I have for now. Maybe we can come
Okay.
back. Thank you.
Mr. Mitnick, did you have questions?
Yes. I'm gonna take my mask off. Number one, are there substitutes available for teachers who are sick or take a day off, for personal reasons?
Yes, there are.
You turn your mic on, yeah.
Yes, Mr. Mitnick, there are.
Okay, that was a question that I had from a teacher. How set in stone is the teachers have to be in the building 4 days a week? That seems to be the most unpopular thing that I've received comments on. And, if we listen to our teachers, is it a possibility that we could reduce that number?
So there is a potential possibility if that's the board's direction. But as you heard me say, Mr. Minnick, in my original SPS response plan update, that is the recommendation from us. And part of that is from the equality of the other staff members in the school division and what they've worked. And I've also just received word that Chesapeake is also going to bring their staff back. They're going to start off with 2 days, and then it will be 5 days starting on September 14th. So it's a situation where it could be fluid based on the needs. 4 days is our recommendation, but again, if the board would like to reduce that amount, of course, that's the board's prerogative. But we're just hoping that we do not make every day optional. That will really defeat the overall effectiveness of our plan.
Okay, and the one other question or area that I'm concerned about is the specialized classes for the special ed students. That's a small group of students compared to the 13,800 students that we have. But again, our teachers are concerned because the severity of the behaviors that the students demonstrate. And we're talking about spitting and kicking and biting. And I know that there are, plans for providing PPE for those teachers, but is that the most prudent use of our staff for those students?
Students that are returning, that we're asking to return to school for program classes. Okay.
Speak up.
Students that we're asking to return to school for program classes are students who have the most intensive support needs. So they're the students that need that support, and they need the routine of coming to school every day. For the decisions of where students will be provided with their services, should there be a safety issue with behaviors, that will be worked out through our IEP teams. But students really do need to be able to come every day so that we can provide that structure. The structure actually reduces the behaviors that you see, and it reduces them not only at school, but at home, because for our students, behaviors are communication. And so when they're experiencing difficulty and lack of routine, you typically do see more behaviors. But once we can put the services in place and have that consistent routine for them, the behaviors are reduced.
And I just want to add to that, to Ms. Whitley's response. Ms. Whitley and I have also received several emails from parents of some of those students in those specialized programs that have just gave us some hardcore testimonials, Mr. Minnick and the rest of the board, on the importance of the routine that Ms. Whitley just described, but also that need for these students to be able to get those supports. These are the supports that realistically they haven't had since March, and we've been aware of that, and those additional resources that we have in the class. And we do realize that there is an increased risk. Ms. Whitley has also purchased gowns for the staff, additional PPE equipment, but the same risk that they were talking about now is the same risk they actually had before COVID. And we want to make sure that we're still going to be consistent with keeping the kids' needs first, because these are the groups that are developmentally delayed, have physical issues that are going on, and putting that structure in place we think is going to be the best thing, especially when it comes to the transition back to any hybrid model or face-to-face.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
I'd like to add to that, though I understand from both perspectives where we're coming from with regard to those students. I do have some concerns, though. I've spent the last, 29 days in the hospital, off and on. A friend of mine just lost, and she said I could share this. She just lost her mother to COVID-19. She said I could share this, so I will. She did get a chance to hold her mother's hand. She didn't get a chance to share a birthday with her mom. This is serious, and she is the mayor of this city. She allowed me to say that, and so I am sharing that with you. Because this is serious, I'm concerned that when our children, and you know I'm a special educator, so these are my babies, I'm an advocate for them, but I'm very serious about their concerns and their needs. And when they do bite, when they do spit, when they do some of the things that they do, which are part of their disability, they aren't trying to harm anybody, but what they do can have serious consequences. And before they get to school, to the professionals that handle them, the bus driver, the bus aides, all of those people can be in jeopardy when they're coming to school. And that is a serious concern for me before they even get to the school. And I'd like for us to really carefully look at what we're talking about doing with them, how we can keep people safe, both the children. The other thing I'd like for us to look at is, one, I know we talked about the fact that we have about 300 children, and only half of those parents, about half of those parents, are really interested in sending them to school, because in my experience, and it seems like the same thing is happening here, many of those children have underlying conditions that mean that they are very vulnerable to all of what is going on as well. So I'm concerned about it from both perspectives, what they can get from each other and from our environment. I'm concerned about the fact that when we take them out of their wheelchairs, if they're placed on a mat for physical therapy, occupational therapy, how are we delivering speech and physical therapy and occupational therapy anyway? Are we delivering those services? And if so, how are we doing it?
We've been delivering services virtually, but we're talking about the population that really has a difficult time accessing those services virtually.
Right.
And they're not able to benefit. So by allowing these populations to come back into the building, and it's still a parent's choice. We're not requiring, it's still a parent's choice. But by allowing them to come into the buildings, we can give them that direct service and that direct support that they can't get when they're at home.
I understand. And my question is, when we find that the behavior is such that it is a threat to the staff person, the bus driver, the bus aide, or whatever, and believe me, I know how difficult it is to move that, to change those things when we've put that IEP in place, especially if the parent doesn't want to cooperate. What do we have? What is our plan? They don't understand social distancing or wearing a mask all day or whatever. How do we control that? And how do we, like I said, this is serious. This is life and death we're talking about. And it's just for them and their peers and all of the people who work with them. So my concern, I think, is real and is very valid. I don't know how to keep everybody safe and to do this. while I want them very much to have all the things that they need, if there are teachers who want to risk it, who feel like they can go in, can we do some homebound delivery services for those teachers who are willing to do that? Can we work with parents? I know in working with my own family members who need physical therapy, occupational therapy, the therapist comes to my house once a week, and then I'm to do the lesson with my family member, with my husband now, the rest of the week. What do we do with regard to that? And can we set up some kind of system where we, even if we bring the children in, the other 3 days of the week, if they have, for instance, if they have CP and they don't just need the service Monday through Thursday, they need to work on PT and OT and everything else the rest of the week. So do we have some options there, is what I'm asking.
That's why it's so important that we have consistency with them coming each day. It's not recommended that we send teachers into the homes for the same reasons that you could be sending people in and they're jumping from home to home. Students would be in their classrooms together with their peers. They're already small groups. They'll be even smaller because some parents are opting to keep their children home for virtual instruction anyway. And there have been different recommendations of how to arrange the classroom using the furniture to keep distance between the children and things like that. So it'll look different from classroom to classroom depending on the needs of the children.
With regard to cleaning, I know that many of the children that I've worked with have been allergic to all sorts of things that we didn't even know they were allergic to until they were exposed to it. How are we going to clean the rooms when we are dealing with bodily fluids and all sorts of things as just a normal part of our day, changing diapers and doing those kinds of things? How often are the rooms going to be cleaned, the changing tables going to be cleaned, the sinks and all of those things?
We already have sanitary procedures in place for toileting anyway. Those are going to be the same. It's the same things as Mr. Napier was talking about before. We haven't changed any of the chemicals that are being used in the rooms or anything like that. So those same pieces are in place. And we would, as far as the toileting goes, staff that are helping students with those needs, they have gloves and gear that they typically wear anyway, and we're adding to that, as Dr. Gordon said. We've ordered some gowns, and we've got like masks or goggles, eye protection for staff as well.
We're doing shields or?
Yeah, we're doing full cover face shields. We have the goggles, as Ms. Whitley mentioned. For the speech piece, we've ordered the masks that have the clear mouth so the students can still be able to see the mouth movements and the formations. We've basically purchased everything on the market to be used especially for these classes.
And do we think that the children are going to, how you think the children are going to respond to the teachers dressed in this regalia, for want of another term?
I think they've been seeing that everywhere that they go.
So you think they'll be accustomed to?
Right, and we did order for the teachers in these classrooms too. We ordered the clear masks for them so that students can see their face. They're less intimidating. It's important for students to be able to see the face of their teachers. We did that for younger students as well, for the staff that's going to be working with them.
You say for OT and PT, and what are we doing for, how are we delivering that service?
For students who come to school that receive direct services, they'll get those services directly. For students that are receiving services virtually, they will continue to be delivered that way. I've gotten feedback from parents as well. Just one of the questions that we asked parents when we reached out to parents, and parents have called and had discussions with us, are, what do you need to help support instruction in the home? So when we're talking about our kids that are receiving virtual instruction. And parents shared that they needed additional manipulatives and instructional supplies for students, even simple things. I had one parent say, I can't have difficulty positioning my child's hand around the pencil because I'm not an occupational therapist. So we've even looked at different pencil grips and things like that we can provide to the parents, and then the occupational therapist can collaborate with that parent at home to talk to them about how to use the different tools at home. So we're looking at a variety of things. It'll be individual things to meet these individual needs of our students to send home to help support instruction too.
I know we have some industrious teachers, because I know that we got the gifted teacher, the music teacher, the special ed teacher together, and they made a recorder out of material. So I know that there are things that we can pay them to do that they can do well if they have to do things away from students. But I am concerned about them meeting students who physically have the bodies and the body strength to do some things differently, but mentally they don't have the intellectual capacity to handle it or to understand what's happening to them. So that is a concern. But thank you, because you all have done a marvelous job with all of this and taking care of the details of so many things. We do appreciate it. Those are my questions, Madam Chair.
Ms. Mayo, did you have questions?
Yes, excuse me, Madam Chair. One question that I have and concern, as you well know, much of my borough and yours, Madam Chair, is rural. And it continues to be a concern from parents about internet access and their children being able to do their assignments. I did hear some of that elaborated during the presentation. Could someone further explain what is being done about that and what kind of access the children that live in the rural areas would have?
I also ditto on that, Ms. Mayo. That was going to be my first question. Resource access centers and so forth. What are we going to do about this? I live in an area, Mr. Littlefield knows, that has very poor reception. So if I want to engage in a conversation, I need to come to the school board office, set up equipment for me and so forth. So I understand firsthand how this is. So I'm interested in also this very question.
Yeah. Yes, and to piggyback on your situation, right now, I am sitting in my home with Wi-Fi because I cannot get internet access at my home. So that's a concern as well. So I understand much of what people are going through with this. Yeah.
So first to address the access that we can address, and I want to be cautious on how I address this. So the areas that have cellular capability for cellular hotspots, we purchased last year or last spring the 525 Kajits. We upgraded those just this week to unlimited data. That'll be the first attempt. We also will be purchasing an additional 500 of those to cover additional students. There are areas in the city we just cannot provide internet connectivity to. There's just not an option for that. Dr. Branch and Dr. Maria Lawson Davenport talked about these resource centers. This will give us, the students, an opportunity to come into the buildings and use our resources as far as the internet access and whatnot, download the HTML from the Canvas sources, or actually do some of the work while they're there in our buildings. Unfortunately, that's probably our best effort to do that. We'll reassess our number of devices as we open up with the virtual environment. If we need to add more, we have applied for the ESSA funds and with regards to the CARE Act, so we can add additional devices if we need to. Unfortunately, the rural area, Mrs. Byram, your area, Mrs. Mayo, your area, I'm very familiar with both of these areas.
Yes.
There are areas there is no cell service and there is no cable access at all. I am part of the group with Education Superhighway. We're doing some work to collect the data. We did a pilot with our students this summer where we actually had our summer school students collect some of who their provider was, what their throughputs were, to see if we can start putting us on the map to have some lobbying going on at Richmond and at the federal government level to start having some pressure placed on the service providers to expand the coverage out here. I know I'm on a committee with Dr. Davenport's husband where we're looking at that from a regional perspective. Unfortunately, these type of large-scale initiative take time, but fortunately, there's a lot of people interested in expanding this broadband.
Yes, yes. I just want to add to that. So this is two parts that we're looking at here. The first part is, this is the main reason why we are recording our lessons. So that if there's ever any challenge with any student being able to view instruction, you're still going to have access to that for 2 weeks. The second part is the reason why Dr. Branch and Dr. Davenport mentioned those resource centers. And we didn't want to get too far down the road with specifically telling you all which schools are going to be open and which time, because we had to wait to determine what plan the board was going to be able to accept. But our original proposal, we were looking at 3 to 5 schools. We had 2 time frames we were looking at for students to be able to come into the building with supervision, because we're going to need some additional supervision for that, or we may potentially be able to use some of our instructional assistants if, again, we're allowed to be in the building for 4 days a week. Our original thought was 8:30 to 11:30 and 4 to 6. But some of that's going to depend on what hours that we're going to be able to set for instructional assistants or other staff, or if we're just going to pay the additional stipends that we do for after-school remediation and et cetera. So we knew that there are some dead pockets within the city when it comes to broadband internet access. 2-part plan to basically have a solution for that: the recordings on Canvas, and to be able to establish these resource access centers. And based on the data that Mr. Littlefield has been tracking basically since March, that's going to help us to determine, specifically, we talked about Pioneer Elementary as an example. We talked about Booker T. Washington. We talked about any areas out in the Whaleyville area specifically, just to try to find if there's any businesses or other groups that we can partner with, or anywhere, so that we can potentially set up some of our own devices there. So depending on what the board provides us tonight regarding guidance, that's going to be one of the first things that the team works on next week, to be able to supplement those areas with some additional options.
Thank you. Any others, Ms. Mayo?
Just one other, and one of my constituents who is a teacher was just curious about the social and emotional lessons that are going to be incorporated in the daily activities. Will that be teacher oriented, or are the lessons already available? How does that work?
Right now, we have a social emotional task force team of educators and parents and community partners that are looking at identifying a social emotional curriculum for students from pre-K through 12th grade, maybe a couple of different curriculums depending on age, that can be accessed virtually. And the lessons would be done on a daily basis, and that's the plan for right now. And some of it would be teacher-led. It would be incorporated for some of the schools that are already doing circles with students. It will be incorporated into that time.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
That's all, Madam Chair, for now.
All right, thank you. You have questions?
I just have one question. Sorry. I have some concern. How many, like if you have 5 students in your classroom, what would be the ratio? Because I maybe missed it. I don't remember hearing. What would the ratio with the teacher and the TA would be in the classroom?
We're planning to bring the teachers and the paraprofessionals that teach the classroom back into the building. So in some of the classes, there's one para. Some classes there are 2 paras. It depends on the class and the nature of the disability of the students that we're servicing. Typically, it's anywhere from 5 to 10 students in a classroom if you have a full class.
Thank you. And I just want to say that it is evident that you all have worked tirelessly trying to figure this out, and unfortunately, there's no perfect answer for this. I don't care what decision we make tonight, someone is not going to be happy. But I just appreciate your hard work and what you're doing. Thank you so much.
Any other questions? Mr. Riddick?
Ms. Byer?
Oh, excuse me, Mr. Mitnick?
Yeah, I just received a message from one of our office workers, and they just wanted to know, to let teachers know, they've been in school 4 days a week from 7:30 to 5:30 all summer long. And yes, it was scary when they first went back, but she took the time to say, we got over it. But the fear was there at the beginning, but, the things have gotten better. In the offices where they're working, there's been no special cleaning happening. Hot waters and no hot waters in some of the bathrooms, but they're there and they're doing their job. And this person just wanted teachers to know that you kind of get used to it, I guess. So I think that that's important, and maybe our teachers need to hear that, and maybe that'll help.
And Mr. Mitnick, please let us know. Could you shoot me a text or email? I need to know which school doesn't have hot water in this bathroom, so we can get that taken care of. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Mr. Riddick?
Madam Chair, I do have a series of questions. I wanted to give other board members the opportunity to ask theirs first. My questions may be a little more in-depth with actual operational aspects. But my first question that I would pose to you all is, will the staff be tested or asked to go and seek tested for COVID prior to returning to Suffolk Public Schools? We've had free testing that was done, so it's no cost to the division. What are we going to do about that in regards to that question? And I have a lot coming after that.
At this time, we don't have plans to do that, and we heavily advertised that free testing, and those sites they ran out of tests within 30 minutes, and so there were lines of folks that were left without any testing available because they were so limited. But we certainly are advertising that and encouraging all staff members to get tested, but at this time, we're not making it a requirement.
Okay. My next question is, what would be the role of support staff with the virtual learning option, the teachers' assistants, and the other support staff we have?
Yeah, I'll take that, and then Dr. Branch and Dr. Davenport can chime in if I forget anything. So we're also going to give our Chromebooks to our paraprofessionals, number one. And as Dr. Branch and Dr. Davenport mentioned, there's going to also be some training for them for Canvas using the Chromebook, et cetera. And part of the things that Dr. Davenport specifically mentioned is the collaborative planning that needs to take place between the teacher and the paraprofessional, because we want to be able to use the paraprofessional for those breakout rooms, for those small group sessions. So especially if it's a situation where it's an inclusion classroom, based on what's written in the student's IEP, there would be a second room set up if the student's IEP says one-on-one instruction, for example, because we still need to make sure that we follow that to the T. So that's where we want to use them to hopefully be able to have some reinforcement. That's part of the reason why you saw on our schedule we had enrichment and remediation activities at the end of the day to be able to assist those students that may have some processing issues. So Mr. Rick, I've gotten that email from so many of our paraprofessionals. What's going to be my role? What's going to be my role? And my answer has been the exact same role that we had in face-to-face. The only difference is going to be we're actually going to ask you to be as well equipped in our technology as our teachers will be.
Okay. Next question.
And Mr. Riddick, for those other positions like bus aides and drivers and other support staff, they will remain in their role. We're still providing meal service, so those bus aides would still be there and assisting. For the special ed population, they would still be in those roles. All other support positions will still be in place. And we may repurpose some people, because if we can get many of our instructional assistants to work with Alphabet, still working for Suffolk Public Schools, but assisting students during the virtual learning time, that will be an opportunity to repurpose them in their role.
That's right.
So if I'm understanding you correctly, if we do virtual learning and you have people who elect to go put their child in Alphabet, we're then taking our TAs, or some of them, repurposing some of them to deal with face-to-face I mean, I want to make sure I'm understanding you clear.
We're asking teachers, we want teachers to be back. We also want teacher assistants to be back, and that would be an extension of their role. But they would have to want to be over there. We're not just sending everyone, and I want to make sure that I'm correct in that.
Yeah, that's correct.
Because some will be more comfortable working online, assisting students. Some would not have a problem. We've even had some discussions about additional monies in supporting that Alpha Best group. So yes, we will be able to use all of our support staff during this time. We also have recommended, as we look at the resource access centers, that TAs or instructional assistants be a part of that monitoring process.
Okay, so that leads me to another, okay.
But keeping in mind that the TA is not the teacher. The TAs would provide the instructional support much like they do in a classroom. So just like in a classroom where a TA may pull a small group out and just review some skills or to assist a student with getting online or understanding a question, they would not supplement, they would not be the direct instructor. The teacher would still be the instructor. The TAs would just be a support person, much like they are in a classroom.
So would the TA have the autonomy to say, I don't want to work? It's not, and I want to be clear, I don't want TAs to come to work expecting to do one task and then they're told your assignment post is Alpha Best. I feel that's unjust. So I want to make sure that they have the right to say, no, I don't want to do that particular assignment. Let me help in another capacity.
We're definitely going to be able to provide them some input, but I'll be honest and tell you that in their job description, it does say other duties as assigned. And as you know, principals have moved some of our instructional assistants to support some other areas. But we want to be able to have that conversation with them in the beginning on, okay, you're going to have some options here. Are you going to support more in a virtual model if you're at the elementary level? Because that's, you know, we may have to have some TAs that may have to move to the elementary schools just to support the Alpha Best instructional model. And we're also looking at a second instructional model that we're going to try to start working on next week that really aligns Alpha Best up with the typical virtual instructional day. So yes, there is going to be a conversation. It just won't be, you know, you're being told to go here without having some conversation with it. But there is going to be some flexibility on if, depending on the needs, depending on the number, or some of our paraprofessionals might be doing some different duties and responsibilities that they haven't done in the past.
I'm 1,000% against that.
Okay.
Okay. I want to go on record that if Alpha Best is providing a service, Alpha Best needs to have their own staff, because then we assume additional liability and responsibility when we ask our employees to go step in that area. That brings me to another question. What level of risk and liability does having childcare at our site, bringing in special ed students, what is the liability posed to us as a division? I think that's the part that a lot of people are not really touching on. But if someone gets sick at your facility and they can prove that they was exposed at your facility, are you liable, and to what extent?
Daycare one. The daycare is a separate entity. They're responsible for their own stuff, with the exception of the cleaning that we'll be providing. But they still have to meet all the licensing requirements and all the same regulations that all of us have to do to be in whatever setting we're in. So if their setting is the same as ours, it's 6 feet apart. They've got to keep the children 6 feet apart. They've got to provide all kinds of ways to keep, not just keep them apart, but keep them with masks on when it's appropriate and to help them get through their day as a separate entity. This is not a Suffolk Public Schools thing, just like with the before and after care. They're responsible for any medications. They're responsible for everything that has to do. The only thing that these TAs that we were talking about may end up doing is helping with students that are having issues getting online to do their work, because that is, Alpha Best folks are not trained in Canvas. They're a separate entity. So if our children are in there and they're trying to get online, we need to have someone available to help them get online. And Alpha Best is not trained in Canvas. So we would need our folks to help with that. And as Dr. Gordon has said, it would definitely be conversations with folks before. And again, you're talking about late afternoon as well, so there would be opportunities to pay people to stay late afternoon, earn extra money if they chose to help between the hours of 4 and 6 for specific things for students that are in the Alpha Best program. They would not take on the responsibility of the program. They would simply be a supplement to help those children. So
Okay.
there's no liability to us for that piece of it.
So while you're there, I'm going to just tag on and we'll get to the liability afterwards. The cost of application with this, who incurs that cost? Is that coming out of Alpha's Best for that staff, the additional monies we're talking about? Because we know our staff is contracted and allotted for a certain amount of money. So when we say an additional hours with additional money, where's that coming from?
If we decide that we want to have an offer to our staff between the hour, is it 4 to 6? 4 to 6, then that would be our responsibility to pay them for specific things that we would want them to provide support for. Alpha Best is still there. They have all their staff. They have all the numbers of staff they need for the numbers of children to be in compliance. This would be just a supplement for the hours of 4 to 6. And so if we decide that's the direction we want to go, we would come up with that pay, much like we were doing last year with the TAs and folks that stayed when we had late buses and we had things and they had to stay till 6. It would be that same sort of model for someone to help and stay with children in order to make sure that they get their needs met.
Okay.
Yeah, and I just want to add to that before you ask your next question, Mr. Riddick. So this is the same pot and pool of money that we would use for enrichment and remediation services,
It's like
algebra
homework
readiness. It's
Is it
already
like
there.
homework help?
Yes, right.
Absolutely.
It's already there. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so this brings me to another question because I'm speaking logistics here. If Alpha Best has, I'm looking at slide, let me make sure I'm telling you where I'm at, 43, and I'm looking at the rates. If Alpha Best has a student doing the $80, and this is a full day, are those rates for the week or is it per day? I just want to make sure that before I get into my question, I'm
If the child
asking
is there
correctly.
1 day, it's the 1 day rate. If the child is there 2 days, it's the 2 day rate. If the child's there 3 days, it's the 3 day rate. It's not added together. It's the rate for 3 days.
Okay.
Okay.
So this is the aspect I'm looking at now. If it's $80 for 2 days, and according to the Department of Licensing Guidelines, I believe the upper elementary age student ratio adult is like 1 to 17, I believe. So if you have 80 times 17 is 1,360. That's for 2 days, okay? And we're going to times that by 4. That's $5,440 that Alpha Best is generating. Why are we paying for it if we're incurring costs for lights, we're incurring costs for cleaning? Why? I'm getting to why we're spending money on that when there are other needs that I think we should take advantage of, students not being in school, to focus on those needs with these additional funds that we have. I don't know if this is just the pot that we got line item that we have to use for this specific purpose. So I'm really trying to figure the logic behind it.
Let me just say this. Those rates are for those third group that are just the general public. If they're a disenfranchised student, they would have a sliding scale based on income. So it wouldn't be as much money per day, per week, whatever is needed.
Mhm.
Okay? There is also a deeper discount for the ones that Suffolk Public School is paying for. So for our own staff whose children are enrolled, that is an even deeper discount. So that was the only way we could afford it, so we've negotiated that. So there are levels. I mean, your math is good, don't get me wrong, but it's not an exact science because you might have a mix of these 3 different groups in there, so you're not looking at them having 5,000. Also, we're not looking to pay people extra during the day. During the regular school day, they're earning money from us, we're paying them anyway. So those would be, as Dr. Gordon said, other duties as assigned. It would only be the after-school homework help type thing, I'm not saying it would be that, but that type thing that we may potentially offer folks an opportunity to earn extra money in order to do that, should we decide to go that route. That is not, again, new money, not changing money. It's simply offering kind of the same things we were offering to those aftercare kids for those hours where we help them with homework.
Okay. Have we considered the option of allowing the Boys and Girls Club to open? Because they have their own tutors that utilizes our facility. Being a former director of a Boys and Girls Club, the one that was in Suffolk, it was really no cost to Suffolk Public Schools. So is that a program that we have reached out to allow to provide services, since Childcare is an in-demand service? Have we reached out to BGC in regards to whether they're going to be able to operate or not?
I don't have any knowledge of that.
So there's two things you have to look at there, Mr. Riddick. Part of our RFP was for the full day as well as before and after. And the Boys and Girls Club is more of a city operation, and they've had some of their own limitations. Now, once school gets back into session with the face-to-face piece, from what our conversations we've had with the city, that's probably when the Boys and Girls Club's more than likely going to be activated. But right now, until it gets to that point, and you know, our projection is at least for 9 weeks, we need to make sure that we kind of have it all covered. So we don't want to violate what the agreement upon was for the RFP. And, you know, again, the cost that we have is going to be set aside from some of the additional funds that we have, but also because we're going to have the, you know, you use the example of the lights on, they're going to be on anyway. And we wanted to make sure that we can have our own people in there. We're never going to turn away that support, but we are not going to allow any other outside groups to come into our buildings until our kids are actually back into our buildings. That's probably just the best way to put it.
I'm going to ask that you look into the memorandum of understanding with the City of Suffolk, Parks and Recreation, and Boys and Girls Club, because it is my belief and opinion that when our schools are not in use, in particular John F. Kennedy as a joint use facility, and that during the summer hours, the Boys and Girls Club operate within the same time scale that you have here. That's not anything that's done with us, but that's something that's already in stone. I want to make sure that if there's another avenue where we can legally take the load off of us already and allow someone else to share in that load if they are willing to, that we do so. But at this point, I want to get into the liability aspect. What liability are we as a school division being held to in the event that someone is exposed at Alpha Best, or that our staff is exposed while doing additional work at Alpha Best? What's that liability, and what are we doing to protect the interests of Suffolk City Public Schools and our taxpayers?
Alpha Best has its own liability policy. They're a separate entity. So they are responsible for their folks and their staff and what they do in their daycare. We're responsible for our folks and what we decide to push in there to help our students. So we're the ones that have hired Alpha Best as an outside company. They have their own liability insurance policy. They're their own entity. They're not Suffolk Public Schools, much like the before and after care program we have had in the past. The YMCA was responsible for their own liability insurance. That is not something that we take on when we hire them in.
Okay. My next question would be in regards to transportation. I can't get off this school bus to save my life. How do we enforce students not wearing masks with every seat having the opportunity of a child being assigned to it? The bus driver driving that bus, are we putting the plexiglass like the city buses have to protect the bus driver? Because if the child comes to school and is not showing the symptoms but is asymptomatic and is still on the bus and driving the bus kids, these masks here, oh my God, they're going to be slingshots. But how are we really going to what's our behavior intervention plan for that?
Right. So the first thing is get the squirt of sanitizer when you get on the bus. The other thing is it's good that we are going to have a limited capacity, but we're going to be using the video. I mean, we're going to let parents know pretty loud and clear that masks are required to be on the Suffolk Public Schools buses. And if they are violating that, then we can't transport them any longer. I mean, that's really not going to be negotiable. And we will certainly use video, Mr. Riddick, to go back and find out if the bus driver is reporting an issue with the child who's refusing to wear the mask. Now, a student who breaks it or what have you, we've already supplied the buses with masks so that we can replace that right away with a disposable mask. But yeah, we're going to require that.
I want to make sure I got all my questions out.
That it, Mr. Riddick?
I believe I have one more. I'm going to make my statement at this point, and it's going to give you a summation. My stance in July is still current. I believe in 100% virtual with none of our children at school. The recommendation that you're asking for, if we disagree with the 4 days, I understand why. I understand the logic, but I believe that we could utilize office hours. Looking at the schedule throughout the day, that we're asking our children to be able to, because when you put a schedule out, it's kind of hard to tell them that this is not what you have to follow, but this is what we want you to do in theory. Just the practicality of that actually being received by the community. So I'm not confident in moving forward with some of the aspects. I'm going to send an email to Dr. Gordon so I can get more clarity for the sake of time. But I want to ensure that whatever we do, far as the day-to-day operations, that's not my scope, but whatever we do, it's in the best interest of our children, their families, and us as the Suffolkians as a whole. So in closing, how are we going to address behaviors of students, especially those who have special needs, and this is not just for special needs students, who feel it necessary to take the mask off and get out of control? Some things they can't control. Are we at this point able to, and I don't know if I'm violating any laws with this, Dr. Buck, but are we able to tell a parent of a special needs child, hey, your child can't return because it's too much of a greater risk to the staff and others if your child is continue to have a mask that is soiled with drool and just taking it off, and I mean, they don't understand, and it's okay, but we're dealing with something that's life or death. How do we handle that? What is our game plan on addressing those scenarios?
So if you're looking at the behavior side of it, Mr. Riddick, the first thing that will have to be determined is if the behavior is based on the student's disability. And we won't take disciplinary action against any student if there's any level of disability. And I'll turn over to Dr. Rice if she wants to add something to that. And we also have to make sure that our staff understands that this is going to be a change for a lot of our students. So this is why we have talked to them in the 21 faculty meetings that we had about the flexibility and transitioning, understanding the different ways that potentially this pandemic and our return to school plan has affected students. So Dr. Rice, if there's anything you want to add to that.
You pretty much captured it, Dr. Gordon, and I was just going to say, and there are going to be some students, perhaps staff, that are unable physically to wear a mask, and with ADA, we'll have to comply with whatever that accommodation is that we can try to adjust some way, keeping the physical distancing, if we have to use a shield, whatever else we can adjust with. So we'll have to work with those on an individual basis, quite honestly.
Madam Chair, so I'm not sure if the board members do have any other questions for the staff or for the team. My only request is that before you all make any level of a vote, if there's any adjustments in our Educate and Innovate plan, if you could state that to us before the vote is made, so that we as a staff will be able to prepare. That will also help Ms. Ward when it comes to our messaging, so that we can make those adjustments starting tomorrow as we are planning to release some videos and some other information based on what the board says.
And with that, thank you for reminding me that our plan right now is on Monday to submit our health plan to the Virginia Department of Education, as well as our instructional plan. And what we are in the process of working on right now, which we were hoping to share with you at the board meeting next week, but because it was moved up to this week, we're not quite ready for it. But we have a resource guide that will be available for everyone that covers all of this information. And it will be all the nuts and bolts for everybody, and it has a lot of graphics in it so that you can actually see visuals. But that resource guide will be made available as well. So all of that would need to be adjusted if things come as suggestions are made at the board meeting tonight. So again, just wanted to bring that to your attention that will happen Monday.
Definitely, and both of those plans have to be received by the Department of Education 15 days before the start of school. So again, any feedback or alterations, we just want to make sure that we're all clear on that moving forward.
Any other? Before we, yes, Ms. Norton.
Well, I think a couple of things I've thought of that I'd like to express. First of all, there was a very high percentage of students that expressed wanting to come back. And I think under normal circumstances, which we're not, but this board, many members have expressed real concern about the emotional well-being of students. And I know that the physical well-being is very important too, but I think students are letting us know that there are some real concerns for their emotional and psychological well-being. And I'm not sure that 10 minutes in the morning, 10, 15 minutes in the morning is really satisfying what they're really going to be experiencing here if we're keeping them home. And they really wanted to come back. And then we had at least 50% or more of our staff who said they were willing to try and wanted to come back. And I think those voices are not being heard. I think that they want to come back, they want to try coming back, they want to do what they can to re-engage in school. And I just want to speak for those that have asked for that and have expressed that need. Many parents want their children in school again, even up to 5 days a week. They would like that. Others on an every other day basis. I believe the 1/4, you can tell me if I'm wrong, Dr. Rice, but the 1/4 coming back 1/4 was based on the first bus allotment that kids could come back, and now
Actually, it was based on the survey that we gave at the beginning that I shared with you, those results, 40%. We had that hybrid plan with 3 options.
Right.
The 4-day-a-week, which is what we went with, the 5-day-a-week, or 1 day for 5 days a week, or the 5 days a week. And so the highest percentage was 40% for that option of the 4 cohorts, Monday through Thursday.
Okay, thank you, thank you. So we are bringing a lot of kids into the school anyway. We've got this now resource school, 3 to 5 schools that we don't know how many kids are going to show up, but that could be a lot. So we are bringing them in. The same time, like at Pioneer, you have 6, 7, or 8 rooms with Alpha Best students in them. Then you have the special ed students. I don't know what buildings they're all in. I mean, there's still a lot of people and a lot of students coming into the building. It seems like instead of having them all in Alpha Best, why aren't we just trying some hybrid school? I mean, if they're all in the rooms anyway, coming in, and I mean, I think there are people that really, like I said, I'm speaking for their voice, and the idea that teachers are not being given the option, we heard the most from those teachers. the fact that their children, we say we're for kids, but I'm not sure we're for the teachers' own kids if we are putting them in daycare. And without really a plan, as I believe Ms. Forsman said, Alpha Best does not know Canvas. And I don't know that I've heard a plan of how those kids will even be on an hour, let alone all that other time. So you have teachers very stressed out because they don't feel that they are being respected and being forced to come in. And then they pick up their child at a very difficult time anyways, that they've been in this daycare all day long, and then are expected to go home and try to do school. I just don't personally see how that is a good plan for our teacher students. So if we're student-centered, teacher students also matter. Their own children matter. And I'm expressing what we heard from many, many teachers. They are not happy with this plan at all. And I worry about that because these days they have options. They do have options, and I don't want to lose any of the teachers. I don't want to lose their students. And so I'm speaking for them. Might not be popular in this group, but I'm speaking for them, and I'm trying to give them a voice. I don't think they are happy at all, and I think they're very worried about their own students. And I think that we should definitely, as Mr. Riddick said, I'm 1,000% against making teachers come in 4 days a week. And that is just putting their own students too far behind, potentially. And that's not servicing our employees well. So I hope we've had a lot of emails that have come into the full board, and there's been a lot of other communication. I hope I've expressed, I feel their point is very valid, and I hope I've expressed that for them. And like I said, it probably isn't popular from this group up here, but they are very unhappy. I think there's a good percentage very unhappy. In fact, they want to do school, but they want to do it with kids in the classroom. And asked to come in and sit for 8 hours a day, they said 20 minutes online lessons, and then what? And I really appreciate what the office personnel said, but when all the teachers get in and you're talking about the copy machine and you're talking about all this, that is just something that I don't think that risk is necessary to take for all of our teachers and aides who are going to be in. I don't think that risk is worth it. For them either, they should be allowed to be virtual. If our students are virtual, I think the vast majority of the week should be allowed to be virtual for them as well. I do have a question about the hot water. You sort of joked, but I think we have at least maybe 6 schools that do not have hot water for washing hands and aren't capable of even getting it. And would you like to speak to that, please? Is that true? Do we have 5 to 6 schools that there is not hot water available and we can't make it available because of how the school is built? Is that true?
That is true, yes. The schools were not designed with hot water, and we can't get it to them.
So, and just to clarify from what Mr. Napier had sent me, CDC guidelines says that cold water washes hands just as well as hot water when it comes to killing this virus?
That is correct. Over the years, I have given that document out to many parents where the CDC states it makes no difference.
And also just to, you brought up some interesting points, Ms. Story, and if we do the math, 66 students potentially in an elementary school, or 11 elementary schools for childcare, Specialized programs, the highest amount are at our high schools, with Kings Fork High School having 34, Nansemond River having 24, if I remember correctly. So we're looking at a maximum of 34 students at a high school and 66 at an elementary school. So I don't really see that's really being a large number. I do understand what you're saying, though, about that option of the folks for the face-to-face. And that was part of the reason why, at the beginning of the presentation, Dr. Rice gave us the COVID and scientific data. And if you look amongst the entire region of Region 2, Isle of Wight was the only one that was going to do face-to-face, and then their board of supervisors came back in and kind of overruled that. So, one of the things I said in July is that we were always going to make a decision that was in the best interest of Suffolk Public Schools, but we're also going to make sure that we're really studying that scientific data. And the data says right now, kids really shouldn't be in the building unless they absolutely have to. And the childcare piece, that is an option. That is an option for parents. That is an option for teachers. And no school division, until Fredericksburg just did it, Charlottesville is going to do it because they copied our model, both school divisions. They haven't gotten that far. And I'm really happy that Suffolk Public Schools is at least providing that option to our teachers, at least providing that option to our parents. If you don't want to send them to the child care in the building, that's perfectly fine. That's perfectly fine. But we wanted to make sure that that wasn't going to hinder, what we were trying to do as an organization. And one of the things that we always told our staff is that we're always going to try to provide them with some different options for things. And as I said, if the board wants to reduce the 4 days, that's the board's prerogative. We just want to know what the days you're going to give us, if you're going to give us any days at all. Because in the month of July, we had 2 trains going down the track, hybrid model, virtual model. As the data increased, Sarah Williford on Dr. Rice's team has done an outstanding job of keeping us up to date. We switched and went to one plan. And that's part of the reason why I released that letter on Tuesday, so that everyone would have a couple of days to kind of think about it, right? Also to give the board an opportunity to develop their questions. When we met with those 21 faculties, we told them what the 2 choices were, and we dropped enough hints. They figured out what the virtual model was, probably what we want to be able to recommend. So, all of the questions that you all asked us on July 9th, that's part of the reason why, as Mr. Riddick said, this is a long presentation. Yeah, it was. Because we really wanted to make sure we addressed everyone, including the ones that have come in today and this week, and that's why I added some things to my response plan. This is why Mr. Napier added some additional discussion, Dr. Branch and Dr. Davenport. Strategically, that's why we put that last, because we wanted to talk about the safety first, the health piece, and then instruction, because to us, that's how important it is. So, I definitely see Ms. Story's points. I definitely see Mr. Riddick's points. This is our recommendation to you all. And as a board, you all have the right to make any alterations that you see fit. We're just ready to start working on it, because even though we're off on Fridays, I can tell you what, right now, these 11 people that are here on this cabinet will be texting and working all day to get this message out so we can really make sure that everything's prepared and ready to go for September 8th.
Madam Chair, Miss.
Yes, Dr. Butler.
One of the things, and I think I've gotten most of the messages that everybody else got. And so while I hear that teachers are sending in stuff and parents are sending in stuff, I used to teach a course called Applied Behavior Analysis, and for people in special education classes, actually when you look at things and people tell you how horrible somebody has behaved, and when you actually look at the data about how the event might have been severe, but it only happened one time, so the child really isn't acting that badly that often. It just looked like, because the behavior was so bad, it was terrible, that it happens all the time. Getting back to my point is that of the 14,000 whatever parents we have, fewer than 25 people have contacted me. Of the 2,000 employees, fewer than 20 people have contacted me. Now, I might get a whole lot of emails tonight, but the truth is, that's all I've gotten so far, so you missed your chance if you start doing it tonight. As far as I'm concerned, the virtual plan is the better plan because the disease is serious. So I'm sorry, that's the way I have to go. What I would like to see with special education for our children with the most severe disabilities is more a phased-in plan than saying, writing an IEP and saying they should come every day. I really would like to see them phased in, and the reason I'm saying that, and I know it's much more difficult and much more technical, but if you write an IEP to say they need to come 5 days a week, whatever happens, whether it's met or it's not met, you've got that plan in place, and it's much harder to change than it is if you do a phased-in plan. If you see how the children react, because they've been out of school for a long, long time, and if you bring them in 5 days and say they're going to be here 5 days or 4 days, whatever it is we decide to do, rather than bringing them in and seeing how they work 1 day a week or 2 days a week or whatever, and as they can tolerate more, then you bring them in more. It seems to me, as a special educator, to be a better idea or a different idea. Not a better idea, but a different idea that might be one to consider, just to consider. I don't know if anybody else agrees. The other part is the only way that I can see is a virtual way. Because right now, that's, like I said, it's life or death, and that's all I can see.
Anybody else?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I agree with Dr. Buck, and I will actually, after the discussion is over, I would love to put that in motion, and that's what we operate from. But I will ask the board to also consider reducing the time in which the staff is supposed to report to school. I would love to see them, or I think from the ones I've spoken with, which was a lot of them, that they would even be inclined to doing at least 2 days of the week. But this is the caveat that I would like to see also. We know there's going to be some learning loss. I would like to see intense staff development. So when our students do return, our teachers can hit the ground running. So in addition to what Dr. Buck just stated with going virtual, 1,000% virtual, and staggering and phasing in our special ed students with severe illnesses, I think I'm quoting it correctly. Disabilities, okay. And reducing the teachers to reporting to work twice a week, and you can do it where science and English come Monday, Wednesday, history and such, and you stagger it out. And then intense staff development, so that way they can hit the ground running when we resume. That's a plan that I can move forward with.
I agree.
Madam
Wholeheartedly.
Chair?
Yes, Mr. Mitnick?
I'd like to say I agree with Dr. Buck and Mr. Riddick that we should go along with the virtual plan. I would also like to go along with the teachers 2 days a week instead of 4. Mr. Riddick, it's not going to work in elementary school for English and social studies one day and science and math another, because elementary schools, our teachers are teaching all subjects.
Every day.
With the specialized special ed programs, Dr. Buck's idea of phasing it in somehow, and getting the kids back to the mindset of being in school. If we could do that, I would also support that. And I don't know if we take these things one at a time, or if everybody wants to vote on it as a package, but it seems like we need to move, that we're at that point and we need to decide how we're going to do these votes.
Madam Chair? Yes. I too support the 100% virtual as well. I do agree with my colleagues, and I do think that something needs to be done about the number of days that the teachers do report. Then there is a real concern about that. So I could live with 2 days instead of 4 if that's what the board wants to do, the majority of the board. But there's a real concern about reporting the 4 days, and I've gotten a lot of feedback from people. And these are veteran folks, or some people who have been very dedicated to the profession, did what they were supposed to do during the spring, and now we're at this point. So I could support that as well.
Madam Chair.
And maybe some modifications to the special ed situation also. Thank you.
Madam Chair, I would like to move.
Wait, just.
No, Mr. Mitnick had something to say.
He did?
No, I'm done.
Okay.
Ms. Jenkins.
No, I just said I totally support the, as I've always said, total virtual, and I agree with the 2 days and modifying with the special ed with phasing in, because like you said, there's no way in the world that they're going to just come back from all this time and be okay. We have to phase them in gradually to see where they stand at that time, so we can appropriately address their needs.
Dr. Button, were you going to say something?
That was really all I had to say. I was going to say 3 days, but I think it's been down to 2 days. I want to say this. I want to say this about our plan, and I want to be very positive about this. I'm at work, and our staff is at work, and our staff has been at work. Our custodians have been at work. Our cafeteria people have been at work. Our office people have been at work. Our professional staff here has been at work. So, I mean, I understand teachers feeling the way that they do, but I want them not to feel that it's being treated as they are not professionals, because that's not fair. The people who are here working, I don't feel like I'm being treated as not a professional having to be here when I have to be here. So, I mean, I have to take exception to that, because I'm a professional, but when it's time for me to report to work, I'm here. One of the things that we have done as a board is insist that we keep all our employees, we keep them all on payroll, we keep them all working. We took some tough hits because we did not let people go. We kept them in their jobs, and teachers are not the only ones. We kept teachers, we kept aides, we kept cafeteria workers, we kept bus people, we kept everybody. And now we're supplying, if people want it, childcare. So, I mean, in some ways, we need to be fair to ourselves. We really do. Now, I'm not going to fight over 2 days or 3 days or whatever. I think 3 days you ought to be able to come to work. If you're getting a full salary, you ought to be able to come to work. I just think so. But if that's the majority of the board, I'm not going to fight about 2 or 3 days. I don't have a problem with that. But again, if we have done, I believe, as a board, we've worked very hard to make sure that we kept our staff and kept people working and kept people employed during a very difficult time. And we've taken a lot of hits because we have. And I think that I appreciate the fact that the staff here has worked as hard as they have. And we've worked quite hard to make sure all of this happened. So even though there have been people who have complained, I think there are a lot of positive things that people need to look at, because there are a lot of school systems who aren't applying an option of having your children taken care of. Even though it's not wonderful, and this is not a wonderful time, it's a lot better than a whole lot of people are experiencing right now. So I just say, you know, sometimes my grandmother used to say, sometimes you should say thank you for some of the blessings that you get, for all of the blessings you get, she used to say. But I think that we need to look at some of the positive things that have been done. And I do appreciate the work that you all have done trying to organize this.
Madam Chair.
I would like one more short comment.
Yes.
So I will, you know, I can agree to the 2 days a week as well. I think that that's good compromise. I think that when you say they come into work, teachers, they will be working. They will be working 5 days a week with this virtual. They are going to be working hard because many of the teachers, and even though there were some who maybe didn't do what they should, many teachers, and I want to speak for them, were working a gazillion hours on this virtual, because no matter how much professional development they get, no one's going to hit the ground running, because this is a totally new mindset. And this is very difficult. This is going from a classroom to something that is totally different, a totally different concept. This is going to take a while to work into. And I think that I'm counting on them getting good professional development, but I also know there isn't this concept of hitting the ground running, because it's a difficult thing to do. It's going to be very difficult to try to track and get these kids all online, and they're going to work very hard at it. There are teachers who tell me of all the calls they made to students. They made more calls last spring than they had made in any other semester and time frame. So these teachers, even though they're not coming into work, they will be working very hard, managing the Canvas system and putting everything into it. They will be working extremely hard, many, many hours, and trying to get their kids all to come online. So I don't want anyone to think that just because we said they're coming into work 2 days, they are working hard, and they're going to work hard. And I believe that we have very professional staff, and I am glad that I don't feel that all of them should be judged on a few that perhaps didn't do as much as they could have or should have. But I feel that it's a different day today. This starts a new year. Everyone knows that grades count. We're going to be taking grades. And I want to speak up for the teachers and say, I will make you a bet that this will be just a great effort that everyone's going to put in constantly, and many more hours than maybe if they had been actually in the school normal, because this takes a lot of effort to manage online learning when you just haven't done it like this before. So I want to speak up for them, and I feel that we'll get a good effort out of them. We'll get the best. They will try to do the best they can under these tough circumstances. One other thing, Dr. Gordon, I hope you consider in terms of starting to come back. I feel where Isle of Wight settled on was bringing back K through 3. And I am very concerned for the K through 3 group. I think that's the toughest group that is for online learning and reading and so on. And maybe the phase-in plan, as we look to bring some kids in, I would be very much for starting with that group, K3, because I think that is the group that really needs some teacher time, face time. And so I hope that we would consider that rather than like bringing in partial everybody. I like that K3 idea. I think they settled on something good, and I hope it can work positively for them. But I hope we would consider something like that when the time comes to bring in the little ones first. I have grandkids that age, and sitting in front of a computer screen, this is not going to be easy for any length of time. So I really worry for those kids and getting their basic skills of reading and math. So that would be, I hope you consider that.
Madam Chair, just because I know that the board is more than likely getting ready to vote, I just want to summarize what you all just said, just to make sure that my team and our school community is prepared, and that also may help to clarify things for the board. Staff is going to be reduced from coming in 4 days a week to 2 days a week. We will still keep that Friday day as an optional, since that was part of the original plan. We're also going to reduce, since the specialized programs were also tuned with that, we're also going to cut them back to 2 days a week as well, just to make sure that we're on the same page there. And then in October, based on what Ms. Story just said, as well as some of your other comments, we would then bring to the board our proposal for increasing, potentially adding K through 3, maybe starting before the second 9 weeks, And also maybe to potentially with the phase-in approach for the specialized programs, maybe taking them from 2 days to 3 days as an example. So I just wanted to kind of just lay that out there as a summary statement, just so our entire team will know. 2 days a week for staff, 2 days a week for specialized programs, Fridays being optional, phase-in approach looking at K through 3 and specialized programs in the future.
No, we hadn't talked about K through 3 at all.
Okay.
We had just talked about, Mrs. Story just talked about
Right,
them, but we
right.
were just talking about
Reentry.
all virtual.
Correct.
We were talking about 2 days a week for teachers, and we were talking about phased-in programs for the children with severe disabilities. And that would be based on the IEP, not 2 days, just phased-in programs to see how they work. You bring them in one day, see how they adjust to the classroom, the situation, the setting. If they can tolerate that, then maybe the next week we do 2 days, the next week, because the way that you write the IEP is going to be the way that what you're held to.
I agree.
For the rest of the semester. What you write down on that piece of paper is what you got.
You're exactly right. And Ms. Whitley had, those are some of the conversations she had. And the main reason I had mentioned K through 3, because Ms. Story brings up a good point, that was also something that Ms. Connor had pushed. So I mentioned that as something that we would bring to you all in October.
Oh, okay.
At the October board meeting for the board to take a look at, because we know this is going to be fluid as we
Right.
continue to plan for this. And even though we tentatively laid out the calendar of what we were thinking, we can make that adjustment now based on those board's recommendations. So those are all of our summary comments, and I'll turn it back over to the board.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Mr.
I'm about to make the motion, but I just want to be quoted correctly for the record. When I said hit the ground running, I was not talking about September. I'm talking about when we return, and I know I said that when I made my comments, that when we return 100% in person, because we know we're going to have some learning loss, so that way the staff is prepared on a diverse strategy to reengage those who may have some gaps. But Madam Chair, I would like to move that we adopt a 100% virtual plan, reentry with 2 days a week for staff development and for staff reporting to work. And I would also like that we have a phased-in approach for our special education students with severe disabilities.
Second the motion.
Second.
Could I ask a question? Mr. Riddick, what did you mean by 2 days staff development?
He didn't say 2 days staff development.
I would like to amend my motion because I don't want to be misconstrued, and I don't want us to be.
You didn't say 2 days staff development.
He did, but then he changed it. He did. Then he changed it. You did change it.
No, I didn't change it. And that's what I'm about to do now. I want to let me speak for myself. What I want to say is that the teachers report to their work location physically for 2 days, and that 2 days will be whether it's their office hours or reporting, or whether it's used for staff development days. That's the part I would like to amend the motion to. So the motion is that we are 100% virtual, that our staff, our teachers report to work physically to their physical location 2 days a week, and that special education students with severe disabilities are phased back into our school far as operations.
Second the motion.
Any discussion?
Yeah. I would favor, I think I can amend that motion, that teachers report 2 days to their buildings. I think that's operational, whatever is going to be done during that time. I don't think we should specify. I think that
Didn't specify my.
that I think I would amend it to, amend to make it clean. Teachers report 2 days, 2 days a week to the building. And then let them decide whatever.
I didn't specify. When I
didn't specify.
amended the motion, I left the usage of those 2 days out, I specifically said that the teachers would report to their physical location 2 days. Madam, could the clerk read the motion?
Motion.
Motion was that we adopt a 100% virtual plan with teachers report to their physical location for 2 days per week, and special education students with severe disabilities be phased back into the schools.
All for the question. All for the question.
Board members, please vote.
Yep.
Board Member Jenkins?
Yes.
Board Member Mitnick?
Yes.
Board Member Mayo?
Yes.
Board Member Story?
Yes.
Board Member Riddick?
Yes.
Vice Chair Brooks Buck?
Yes.
Board Chair Byram?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I don't know how to do this, but I would like to recommend to the board that we have a list of public speakers, and it's 11:07. If we